Welcome to the Miami Heat Zone podcast. I'm your host, Martel Llewellyn. Guys, we're pushing up 4,000 subscribers. Now, if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, and thank you for all the support. So today we have Off Ball Takes on the pod. Make sure that you guys go to their channel and get them to 1,000 subs. Make sure that you guys like, share, comment, and subscribe. Guys, just plug yourself like one more time. Maybe like if you guys have any more platforms.
Yeah. This is Yarby Laws from Off Ball Takes. We have Instagram, TikTok at the OBT podcast. Follow us there. We talk, general NBA stuff. We've been covering the finals like crazy, pushing out crazy content. Obviously on YouTube, Off Ball Takes, again, general stuff, the whole NBA. So we'll probably cover your favorite team. So please do like and subscribe.
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much
Perfect.
we pretty much post content. Chris from All Ball Takes. We pretty much post content every Monday, Friday, and then we also do live streams. We've been doing live streams after each finals game, and then we're also probably in the off season going to do some as well. So, so like you said, check us out on the socials, Instagram, TikTok, and whatnot.
There you go. So today, Bill Simmons was saying that Trey Young would be a solid fit, for the Miami Heat. So what do you guys think about Trey Young's fit? Because I think he would actually help this Miami Heat offense alone. Because don't get me wrong, I think that Spo will always have this Miami Heat team playing great defense, even if it's Trey Young. So how do you think about Trey Young's fit with the Miami Heat?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of look at it from the perspective of obviously he's a really talented player. But on a team like Atlanta, right, where he's your best player, and then after that, it's DeJounte Murray who's good, and then there's kind of a drop off. Maybe that's not the best type of fit for him if you want him to be on a successful team, right? He's probably better suited as like a second guy, or even a third behind, some other guys that he can probably play better alongside, and probably feel like, oh, I can get behind playing these guys because his style of play, even though he's very good. Right, he probably has the ball a little bit too much, but it's mainly because of the roster around him. But if he's playing alongside better talent, then that probably will allow you to get the best out of him. He's never going to be a great defender, but it'll probably be, if you put him around really high level defenders, right? Like, the Heat had a pretty good defense this year. And like you said, Spoelstra's been a great defensive coach. That could probably allow you to maximize, what you would want out of him because he's still a great passer. And really like almost an offensive engine onto himself, right? Where he can, if he's kind of one of your main guys, you're going to be a really good offensive team, right? Even though the Hawks haven't been that great other than, the year they went to the conference finals, they've been one of the better offensive teams the last few seasons. So, and for the Heat, right? Like you need some offensive firepower, right? Because their defense this year was pretty good for most of the season. But, offense has been an issue for them, right? And some of that is just they weren't healthy, but you also would probably like just to have just some better offensive talent, right? Like you don't need a Tyler Hero if you have a Trey Young, and then you can probably just, build the rest of the roster around, whoever else you want to stay there. So that's where I think it would probably make a lot of sense. And I think in a situation like that, you will get the best out of him. Because not that he never tries or anything, but just, on a good team where you can play behind some other guys, right? That's what you would want, as opposed to if he's just on like, some mediocre team where you can kind of just do whatever he wants and there's no real accountability or anything. That's not what you would want. So I think that would be a really good spot for him.
Yeah. And, I think the thing that kind of makes Trey Young underrated is for sure his ability to make people around him better. We saw him do that with John Collins. But I think it would be amazing, if he could be paired with Bam, because I think you would kind of see Bam's offense skyrocket. Because I think as good as he is already, you're going to probably see a major improvement from him in that regard. My only question about that, acquiring Trey Young would be what would the package look like to get him? Would it be Hero? Would it be Jimmy? Because it all depends on what, Atlanta's asking price is going to be. So that would be my one concern. Yes, it's a great target, but is it realistic? But the guy is amazing. I think, he can catch fire from three. We know offensively he's capable of doing everything. He can play make, obviously, like I said, make people better. Another question I would have is defensively. I think there probably is a way to scheme him, and hide him in the scheme defensively. But I think that's going to take a lot of work and time, and I wouldn't expect like a one-season turnaround. But I think I do like the fit a lot.
Yeah, so the probability of us getting Trey Young is probably going to be really hard, only because other teams could probably price us out. But
Yeah.
It's kind of like what you said. Like if he was able to, just to make guys like John Collins and Clint Capella better, could you imagine with an Olympian and an All-Star in Bam Adebayo? And I know a lot of people will talk about his shot chucking, but which he kind of did a little bit too much. However, in an Eric Spoelstra system, I don't see him doing that. and
Right.
we are on it. But like I think we were ranked 28th in offense. He would help this offense tremendously, and we don't really have a say in that. Because think about it, why would I want us to have a 28th ranked, offense? I'm gonna take Trey Young and figure it out later.
Right.
So of course, we would obviously be building around Jimmy and Bam, but I just don't think that we'd be able to match anyone else's, price range in terms of maybe Jaime, Tyler, Jovic. And I don't really think that Pat Riley wants for those guys. Probably Tyler Hero, but I don't think he wants to get off of his two young guys. So the
Right.
next guy too is from I think it was NBA Central who said that the Miami Heat are landing favorites to get Russell Westbrook. So I saw a lot of people saying that he's trash, he's garbage, but he's the ultimate facilitator. He's the ultimate hustle guy. He's the ultimate Heat culture, like player. Yes, he might shoot a little bit too much, but what do you guys think about Russell Westbrook? Possibly as a sixth man for the Miami Heat.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a six man, that would probably be better than him, as a starting point guard, right? Because obviously he started for the Clippers last season. Then this season he started for them, and then they brought in Harden. And, it's kind of redundant to have both of them, in the starting five at this point in his career, right? Where you don't really want him playing like 30 minutes a game. But if it's a guy that's playing like, I don't know, 18 to 27 or something like that, depending on the night, probably would be fine. Obviously, the fit's tougher than Trey Young because, he's not that great of an outside shooter. Obviously, he's much older than Trey Young as well. So, it might be better suited as, a situation where you're trying to fill out the rest of your roster, but it's not necessarily a signing where you're completely reliant upon him. I mean, I feel like, you would prefer to have Trey Young or something like that. But obviously that, like you said, it's not a super realistic option. But I just feel like it may be a little bit tougher because when you have him and then you have Bam, right? Then Bam, he's been shooting more threes this year, right? But obviously he's still not somebody that people are going to be ready to just guard from the 3-point line just yet. So I think the fit there is tougher, but the playmaking, facilitating is still really good. It's just, I guess, the question would be how much more, what's the likelihood that he has some type of decline at this point, where his age, again, he's not quite the same player as he used to be, right? He can still help you. But, if you're the Heat, you might like to have some younger guys as opposed to, some of the age guys, because I feel like, they can kind of be a little bit less consistent. But at the same time, it doesn't hurt to have a veteran, on your team, right? Because obviously, sometimes the young guys aren't ready, or they may not just be, they may be more wild cards or something like that. But I don't really have a huge issue with it. I just feel like it would be more so we already have the rest of the roster figured out. So let's bring him in and add him as opposed to him being like a major cog or key to the team. I feel like that would be a little bit tougher, but it also depends on what he wants, right? Because, I know there were reports by the end of the season that it may not have been him just being okay with coming off the bench, right? Because initially it was reported that he suggested the idea of coming off the bench, but then by the end of it, he was more frustrated. And maybe that was just because they weren't winning. So maybe winning cures all in a situation like that. But I feel like that would probably be a trickier task to make him fit than Trey Young, but it would obviously be much easier to get him because, assuming he opts out of his player option, he's probably not getting much more than, a few million anyways, right? Exception level money at most, right? Between like 4 to 8 million or something like that. Maybe not even that much at 8.
Yeah, and it's like I think he fits the mold, for the Miami Heat and what they're trying to build and accomplish perfectly. In terms of being, under Spoelstra, I think that's going to be awesome. But another thing that I noticed is like you talked about two creators so far, and Westbrook is a creator, no matter what way you really want to look at it. Whether he creates for others himself, we know he can do that. And the horrible part about NBA fandom is they've kind of labeled him as like a kind of like a toxic player, bad, trash, whatever the case may be. But he's not trash. You look at his impact night in, night out. It's awesome what he's able to do on the rebounds. Obviously, we know he can get downhill. The only probably part of his game that is lackluster is shooting, and I think that would be a concern next to Bam. But I think Heat fans can probably look forward to Bam potentially getting that 3-point shot together, because I think he's been on the up and up every year since he's come into the league, and I think he's gotten better every year as well. And he's your best player, so you kind of expect that from him. But it's tough because I think he is probably the most realistic option in terms of Westbrook. But like you said, what is the likelihood he wants to kind of come here or come to the Miami Heat? That would be probably my biggest question. But I think it would be a good fit, better than people would probably like to say.
But I tell people all the time, like, why do we want all these undrafted guys, Drew Smith and Cole Swider? I would rather have an NBA veteran on my roster. Don't get me wrong. Do we go
Sure.
out and go sign all the old players? No. But if you're telling me that you can get a guy like Torian Prince or get a guy like Bol Bol, I love Bol Bol.
Mhm.
I think Bol Bol is super underrated. I just don't think he's been given the chance or the platform and the minutes to actually like. There has to be a team, which is the Miami Heat. I think that they're the perfect team to invest into Bol Bol. He's the guy
Okay.
that's 7'3" and has a handle like Kevin Durant.
Hmm.
He's a floor spacer. He could definitely play next to Bam in a buyout. I think he still
Yeah.
needs to utilize his size just a little bit more and really show his dominance on the court. But I think Bol Bol would be absolutely perfect for the Miami Heat. I don't know
Yeah.
what you guys think about that.
I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
coming out of college, he was pretty good.
yeah. I
But
mean,
what's up?
for a minimum contract, I mean,
Yeah, for
there's
a minimum
nothing really
guy.
wrong, with experimenting and trying, to see if a player works, right? I mean, like, we've all, had teams at different points that have signed, guys for the minimum contract, right? On my team, the Lakers, right? We tried, what was it, Cam Reddish and Christian Wood, right? And so sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work out, right? Like they did Malik Monk a couple years ago, right? And that was a great signing. Obviously, you couldn't keep him. But with Bol Bol, it's probably unlikely that he goes from from what Malik Monk was doing at the minimum, and then he gets like 10+ million a year, right? He might be a more keepable guy if he ends up panning out for the Heat. So, there's nothing wrong, with signing those types of guys. It just, I don't know if it's like a day one signing. It may be one where it's like, all right, we have some extra spots open, so let's
Yeah.
just, give this guy a shot, which is fine, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with signing anybody on a minimum contract. Obviously, it's much better if they hit, but sometimes, you do have to take a gamble. And that's sometimes probably the toughest part of, being a general manager or putting a roster together is like sometimes you do have to take gambles, you have to take risks. And sometimes they don't work. And then other times they do work. So I think that's one where, again, you're not putting a lot of resources into it. You're not trading a bunch of picks or a bunch of valuable players to get him. It's a minimum contract. So no issues with that.
Yeah, and the way that people were talking about Wemby, this season was how people were talking about Bol Bol when he was, coming out of college. Unfortunately, he just had the huge foot injury, I think it was, that really tanked his stock completely. Because I feel like, if he was a lottery pick coming into his draft, then, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Like he'd be a franchise guy. But that's not the case, unfortunately. And I know people have kind of questioned his work ethic. I'm not personally, and I know you guys aren't either because we're obviously praising him. But I think he could be a huge impact, especially, for a team that kind of lacks at the true center depth position, in the Miami Heat. That would be awesome. And he's, another guy, like a creator or a potential creator. But I think you guys need to invest in some guys that have some skill, more so than character.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So the last one that we're going to hit today is Lauri Markkanen. So we've been linked to Lauri Markkanen. It's been reported in the past that Danny Ainge, he has liked Tyler Hero in the past, but my only issue with Danny Ainge is that he's a thief. He's going to try to ask for like 4 or 5 first-round picks. He's trying to fleece people. So what do you guys think about the Lauri Markkanen fit, especially next to Bam Adebayo? Two guys that they can create their own shot, they got their own handle, they can rebound. Lauri Markkanen is not the best defender, but he's definitely elevated his game since he's left Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a really good last couple of seasons in Utah, right, where he's basically giving you 23, 25 a game, 7, 8 rebounds, right, shooting almost 40% from 3, almost 50 from the field. So he's a super talented player, and the best part is, it's a pretty, cheap contract as of right now, right? It's like DeJounte Murray from last season where he's making like 18. Obviously, the issue is, like you said, you're probably going to have to give up a lot of picks because they're not just going to give away an $18 million player like that, for nothing because the salaries, you're not going to be able to match, star for star or something like that. It's an intriguing fit, right? Because, the last time we were on here, we were kind of talking about guys like, say, like a Kyle Kuzma, PJ Washington type 4, right? Where they're more so kind of like floor spacers that can, kind of also do some other stuff as opposed to, like your typical creating scoring 4s, right? Like a Markkanen. But, I guess, again, if you have Eric Spoelstra, that's a guy where he might be able to kind of make a fit like that work. So you always probably kind of want to bet on the talent. It's just kind of like, with the Trey Young thing, but just to a lesser degree. I would just be curious as to, is there another team that might be more likely to kind of step in, and grab him first? And then you also have to factor in the extension. I'm assuming whoever trades for him is going to be fine with giving him, whatever he wants, right? Because you're not going to trade for him and expect him to walk. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with that for the Heat. It would be kind of a bizarre fit, but, again, given that he, kind of does like to play with the ball in his hands, maybe there's some possessions where maybe he and Bam can kind of do 4 or 5 pick and roll, and that would be kind of different from what a lot of teams do. So sometimes if you can get kind of creative with possessions like that, that might be able to throw some teams off. So it's a bizarre fit. It probably wouldn't have been the first one, that I would have thought of, but I think, there may potentially be a way to make it work.
Yeah, this is by far my least favorite option. I'm not going to lie to you guys, but I think there is a pathway for it to work, but there's also a pathway for it to turn into like Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns. That would be my
Right.
main fear is like, you have two big men that can do something with the ball, but at the end of the day, one of them sucks on defense, plain and simple. But I think there is a pathway for it to work. Like Chris was talking about, that would be a unique situation where you do have a huge pick and roll between a 4 and a 5. I think that's really unique. And it would be kind of, I guess, Denver-esque, but, not really, in terms of like what Aaron Gordon and Jokic can do. I think that's probably one of the only teams that we've kind of see run that to execution and perfectly and stuff like that. But I think Spoelstra would be the guy to kind of maximize what you could probably get out of Markkanen. Probably, scheme him into a way where you can make him look like a better defender. My only other question would be like, he's been on Utah for the past couple of seasons and he's been the best player on Utah. And that's kind of scary, I think, to me, because I think people do fall into the trap of like, yeah, you got a great player on a horrible team. And that sometimes can be really bad, especially when they're in that tier where you don't consider them like a top 20 guy, but like, they're on the verge of like showing a lot of potential and signs. But then when they come to a different team, they look like complete crap. Take Bradley Beal on the Suns, for example. Like, this was a 30-point, per game scorer. And then he comes to the Suns and, completely loses his ability to shoot the basketball and anything in that sense. So
But
that
he's
would be the only
fraudulent,
concern.
though. Bradley
Okay.
Beal's always been fraudulent. Ever since,
Sure.
listen, ever since John Wall left, he was fraudulent in Washington. I don't care what
Sure.
anybody says. He
Sure,
didn't lead
agreed.
those young guys. He didn't help those young guys, and he was never available. And even when he was scoring 30, but guess what? He wasn't making his teammates better, and he wasn't winning.
Sure, agreed.
Right.
And I'm a Wizards fan. Like that, I feel the same way. But my concern is I just don't want Lauri Markkanen to kind of regress, and then like the Heat are kind of trapped and stuck with him. But I think there is a pathway for that unique situation to kind of show itself, because I think it would be awesome for you guys to get another creator, because that's what you need. Point blank. Period. No matter who you guys get, you need a creator, and I think Lauri Markkanen is good at that.
Yeah, I mean it's a move where it's a big gamble where, if it works, it could work really well, and if it doesn't work, it has the potential to be kind of rough. But it does feel like his talent level is something where, it would be kind of hard for it to be where you'd be a little surprised if it didn't work out, but it also depends on what the team even is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is this a scenario where Butler's gone, but maybe we kind of just for a brief time, kind of just do a soft rebuild, right? Or are we bringing in Markkanen to play with Jimmy Butler? Or, that's where some things can kind of change, right? Like it's not that big of a deal, I guess, if, you're just kind of adding to the group. But at the same time, given his age, he's not old or anything like that, right? Again, it's a move where it's not bad, but like Yarby said, it is kind of a bizarre one where it's not one that I would be the biggest fan of, because again, I'm more of the idea of like, get like a more natural, space the floor, defensive minded forward type guy next to Bam, as opposed to, like a guy that wants to play with the ball in his hands and doesn't do as much of the defensive stuff. But, again, with Spoelstra, maybe anything's possible. So,
because don't lose your identity. That would be my main thing in terms of making these moves, is like, we already know, like there is the tenacity, there is a certain kind of fight that the Heat do have. And I don't think, you want to lose that if you're trying to acquire one of these guys.
Well, guys, thank you guys so much for coming on the show. Guys, make sure that you guys go to their channel. Like I said, get them to 1,000 subscribers. Make sure that you guys go there, like, share, comment, subscribe. Guys, you guys want to plug anything before we leave?
We're doing a live stream on Wednesday, so come in through that. It's going to be covering, I think, what is it, Game 3 of the NBA Finals. So we're gonna those are going to be our spur of the moment thoughts, and then obviously we'll have like a new episode out around Friday.
Yep.
Guys, make sure that you guys go over there, like, share, comment, subscribe, and thank you for all the support. And we're out.